an estate within a bloodline over a period of time. It's the succession of values, not simply the succession of assets.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Learning for Legacy. Today I am joined by a very special guest, Bishop Wayne Malcolm. Now, Bishop Malcolm has been called a master motivator and is considered to be a leading performance coach who draws from a wealth of experience as a Christian leader, an international conference speaker, and an entrepreneur in the personal development industry. He is known and affectionately known as the Business Bishop and has authored 30 books on self-development and entrepreneurship as they relate to the Christian faith. The Bishop has personally trained thousands of people around the world through workshops, seminars, and training programs on entrepreneurship and professional success. He's likewise addressed thousands of audience members in the public, private, and voluntary sector as a motivator, keynote speaker, and trainer. And in addition to his global speaking itinerary, the Bishop appears on numerous TV and radio programs and hosts weekly webcasts that attract a global audience. Now, the Bishop is also a community man and is considered to be a social activist. He's led numerous campaigns for social and economic justice. He sits on several committees and forums designed to represent disenfranchised communities and is a sought-for speaker at public rallies. He further operates as an advisor to the UK government and as a spokesperson to the media on issues affecting ethnic minorities in Britain. The Bishop travels also extensively as an author, a speaker, and a coach, sharing cutting-edge ideas on the science of achievement and the laws of personal effectiveness. He is also the founder and president of the International Christ Ambassadors Network, known as ICANN, which houses a network of churches, an academy for entrepreneurship, and a global network of aspirational believers. In addition to his role as a mentor, a coach, a consultant, a trainer, and a speaker, Wayne Malcolm is also a recording artist, a songwriter, and a playwright. Above all, Wayne Malcolm is committed to the spiritual and economic growth of individuals, communities, and nations. Bishop Wayne Malcolm, welcome to the show.
After all that, I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here, Afam.
Thank you so much. Now, you're a community leader, an entrepreneur, and an ordained minister. Would you mind sharing with us your unique lane of service that navigates all three? Because some people would struggle with just one.
Yeah. And I get it. I really do get it. So yes, it's a coat of many colors, I guess. And I guess it's the result of my own journey. So I encountered Christ at 15 years old. And my life took on a new direction. But prior to that time, I was exposed to all of the struggles and hardships of inner city urban life, raised by my mother, three of us. And we made ends meet, and we did what we could to survive and thrive and be happy. Of course, we didn't think we were poor, and we never, because everyone was in the same boat. We were just doing life. And I didn't think there was anything particularly odd about mine. But, back in the 70s, urban inner city life was not easy. And so I got involved in a lot of things before the ripe age of 15, a lot of things that are probably definitely illegal. But that's just how it was. So my life took on this turn, and I became fascinated with learning simply because my old friends didn't want to hang out with me anymore. I probably didn't want to hang out with them either. And so I had lots of time to myself. So I joined libraries and would just spend days, hours a day reading, reading history, reading philosophy, reading politics, just reading as much as I could. And I was definitely on a religious quest. So I read a lot of religious texts, and did that for several years. Then my professional journey began with an opportunity in financial services. A friend of mine said, "Oh, are you looking for a job? I've got a great opportunity for you." So I went along to the presentation, and effectively there was this multinational financial corporation looking for sales executives, and they were ready to supply all the training, give you all the tools, but the caveat was it's commission only, right? So I was plunged into this world where I was trained very well in terms of selling financial products. Didn't think of myself as a salesperson because we were called consultants, right? We were financial consultants, and but suit and tie, briefcase, lots of paperwork, lots of charts, and did really well in that particular field. Now, that field seeded certain disciplines into me because it was commission only. You know, you had to be pretty self-motivated. You know, you had to wake up. You had to get up on time, get ready, get to work, get into the office, follow up your leads, generate leads, close sales. And we had to, I didn't realize, but I was learning business. I was learning at least self-employment. I was learning entrepreneurship. And it also helped me with any sort of social anxieties I might have had, because you have to meet people, create rapport, engage in small talk, win people over, visit strangers and do a presentation. So I was learning this great skill set. I didn't think of it that way. I thought, this is the job. I need to learn this in order to do the job. I didn't realize that this would be a transferable skill set that would follow me throughout life. But of course, my passion was still the gospel. My core passion was the gospel, but this is work I was doing. So round about my early 20s, I got this real conviction that I needed to go into the ministry full time. This was what I was passionate about, is what I was born to do. This was my mindset. And there were things happening in society at the time that just made me feel like, we don't need another financial salesperson. We need a good preacher. And this was my mindset. So I went into the ministry. Of course, I'd done some training with the denomination I was with, went into the ministry, but I took with me all of those principles from the financial services, which meant I was very focused, very disciplined, very goal-oriented. Everything was based on goals, a schedule in terms of how we were going to, grow this church from 5 members. I had all these close ratios. I developed a presentation, and I was just out and about meeting people in the area, generating leads, and then following up on the leads, and then closing with people converting and joining our church. So this was my kind of mindset at a very early stage. And of course, I kept reading the books, the motivational books, the inspirational books, the business and leadership books, and it would begin to bleed through or come out in my preaching. So I guess we began attracting aspiring types of people. And that kind of led into this whole thing of business bishop, and there are many other things. I'm sure we'll get to them, but I think to answer your original question, what actually bridges it for me is that helping people to overcome adversity and to become the best they can be, That's just something that's why I do ministry. It's why I do business coaching and consulting. It's why I get involved in some social activism. It's why we're engaged in philanthropy. I think that if it is within my means to alleviate suffering, poverty, distress, then that's what I'm born to do. And so that kind of comes through, I guess, in lots of different things. And of course, you read the bio, but the bio is summarizing almost 40 years of life. So we've not always been active in social activism or in political consulting, or these are episodes of which I'm still available and still do bits and pieces. But fundamentally, today I'm in the ministry. I love the ministry, and we have developed tons of resources for entrepreneurs and leaders in various sectors. So I'm out here coaching and consulting and preaching the gospel, and that's why they call me the business bishop.
That's excellent. That makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Now, on this show, one of the things that I talk about is the fact that we all face loss of some kind, but people can sometimes feel that setbacks disqualify them from ever becoming successful. Was there any one particular time in your life that you came across a setback that seemed so overwhelming, but it actually happened to be a catalyst to push you forward towards becoming the person you are today?
Well, yes, most definitely, but they are too numerous to actually list. I think that at every chapter, in every season, and on every level, there has been a catalyst that either pushed or pulled, either pulled me up or pushed me forward. And in many of those cases, it would have been, the collapse of something, or the or becoming disillusioned with something that wasn't working. I don't really think of failure. I tend to think about it as feedback. And I was getting a lot of feedback. So, we would try things and they didn't work. I'd really study the feedback and go on again. But yes, I mean, in the ministry, we are acquainted with hardship. We deal with, we walk with people through the entire spectrum of human emotion. And we basically deal with a lot of things that they don't teach you in the Bible school, right? You're at the bedside where people are dying. You're at the graveside. You're blessing babies. You're joining people in matrimony. You're counseling people through very difficult situations. And so I think the answer to that is yes, there are lots of situations or adversities that became a catalyst for change. And it's not that I'm celebrating those things. I celebrate the fact that those things were not the end of me, but they were the beginning of a new version of me, and that I celebrate.
That's interesting. There's a very central theme that I've come across through many successful people like yourself have alluded to, and you've just done that just now, how you don't look at these situations as failure scenarios, but more feedback, more of almost like resetting the moment to learn what you need to learn in order to move forward. So
yeah, absolutely. I think the old phrase "necessity is the mother of invention." For me, it simply means that you're never more creative than when you are forced to find a solution. And sometimes life backs you into a corner, and you are forced to find a solution, and you're forced to entertain the unimaginable. In some cases, leaving a job or leaving an area, or it's unimaginable, but you can get in a situation where you're forced to do so. And I use the word force, and there's some people really struggle with the word force, but I like to be honest in my motivational, inspirational teaching, right? I don't think of myself as a motivational speaker. I'm more so a motivational and inspirational teacher. I like to be honest about the fact that a lot of the progress we make in life, it does not reflect our passion, right? A lot of it reflects the pressure that we were under. It's not always inspiration. Sometimes it's desperation. Okay. It's not always faith. Sometimes it's force. And we are pushed sometimes, and we are pulled sometimes. And it's important that instead of fighting the wave or fighting against what's happening in your life, that you start to read it and say, okay, well, this has happened. Okay, what now? What next? Where from here? And that way you kind of take control, and you eventually leverage the situation. So often when I'm reading the autobiographies of outstanding people, I'm looking between the lines. I see the passion because that's what they want to project. I see the passion, I see the inspiration, I see the faith, I see the courage, I see the discipline, I see all of that. But then you start reading between the lines, and you'll start to see that, well, actually, you were under a lot of pressure there, and this other venture had failed. You were financially ruined at one stage. Many of the people that went on to become financially outstandingly successful, have a bankruptcy in their past, or have, a really difficult financial time, a time of struggle. And so those things, perhaps in those moments, they made decisions that have served them well. Perhaps in those moments, they made choices that have served them well. I don't think we can control what happens to us in life. I think we can always control our response to it.
That's great. And on that theme of response, this actually makes me think of two books that you wrote. It was somewhere between 2009 and 2010. I mean, you've written many books, but there were two books from that period that you had authored called The Miseducation of the Masses, What They Didn't Teach You at School, and The New Game Revolution, which was all about making money while you sleep. Now, in the last book, you considered the financial squeeze placed on individuals and industries as a pressure that forces people to generate alternative streams of income. So when you were writing that book, what was your intention for families in particular?
Well, this book, that book, The New Game, Making Money While You Sleep, that it was a response to the financial crash and crisis, 2008. So 2008, we had this credit crunch. We had banks going bankrupt. We had historic high street brands folding overnight. We had lots and lots of economic uncertainty around the world. So I needed to respond to that because I had realized that the schools never presented an alternative to employment, right? It was like you get a job or you're done, right? The job was the point and the prize of the whole educational process. In fact, it was also the stick. It was the carrot, but it was also the stick. Like, if you don't do well at school, you're not going to get a good job. So it's almost like we come through the system blinkered to where we either get a job or, we're at the mercy of the state. But to me, it was very clear that the alternative to employment is self-employment. It's not unemployment, right? You don't have to be unemployed. You can be self-employed. And I realized that we didn't have much self-employment education, and therefore, as a population, we didn't have much self-employment skills. And lots of people didn't realize that just because you can't get a job doesn't mean you can't create a job, right? And so I guess I was on a campaign to try to empower individuals and families who had been adversely impacted by the credit crunch. I wanted to empower them to begin thinking of alternative ways to generate money. And of course, by then, we were in the internet age, and there were lots of opportunities for people to begin generating alternative money sources, particularly online and some offline. And that was really the driving force behind that. Massive unemployment was in the UK, lots of financial uncertainty. And I wanted to make it very clear that the alternative to employment is not unemployment, it's self-employment. Okay. If you can't find a job, you can always create one.
Excellent. So your outlook from the 2008 crisis had a lot to do with a lot of the content that you put in that book. So if we fast forward to the current state of play today, has the global reset caused by the COVID-19 global pandemic altered your thinking on this in any way?
I'm not sure it's altered my thinking. I think it's accelerated my thinking, because I think that whatever crisis we were seeking to address in 2008, 2010, I think I think that the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns and the billions and trillions that governments have poured into this this crisis means that we're back in another recession of sorts. Okay, so that there are similar challenges. However, they are compounded by a set of modern features. Right, so I think we're in a crisis, and I think the economic pandemic is yet to fully sink in. But it's compounded by a set of features, which if I'm free to go into, I'm happy to go into.
Of course.
Okay, cool. So I think that the pandemic accelerated the inevitable. Okay. And the inevitable was that we were moving towards a digital economy, and we were moving towards the elimination of the middleman, and we were moving towards the redundancy of manual labor. We were always moving in this direction because of, I guess, disruptive business models and disruptive technology. And I use that word disruptive, not in its bad sense, but in its business sense. In a business sense, a disruptive model or technology basically changes the game and makes obsolete the old game. So people who were financially or emotionally invested in the old game become big losers when disruptive technology or a new disruptive business model comes in. So classic example would be maybe Airbnb. Airbnb managed to cut out the middleman, which was the estate agent. So back in the day, if we needed accommodation, we go find the estate agent. Now we just go on an app and we can do that all ourselves. Amazon is another classic example of disruptive technology and business model, and Uber, perhaps the most notorious. There were minicab. When I was growing up, there were minicab offices everywhere. Black taxis could charge what they want and do as they want. Now people have options, they have choices. And for the consumer, Uber is more convenient, it's more affordable, so it's disruptive. So we were already moving in the direction of massive disruption in terms of business models and therefore opportunities for employment, because the new worker is a knowledge worker, not necessarily a fingers worker. Okay, so your suitability for employment has a lot to do today with your skill with technology. But of course, we were heading into this fourth industrial revolution. with the advent of artificial intelligence and some of the things that can be done with the internet that are not yet rolled out, but they can be done. So we know that driverless cars are not too far away. We know that the drone shopping, drone deliveries of your shopping has been experimented with, tested, and it's not far away. But whereas these things sound exciting, it means that there's no jobs, right? The drivers for the deliveries, they're not going to have jobs if Amazon can drop ship everything to you using drones, right? All the Uber drivers are not going to have jobs if the cars are all driverless. And in virtually every field, we're seeing the elimination of manpower in favor of mind power and technology. And whereas before the pandemic, I would have said, this is way down the road. The pandemic has accelerated the inevitable in that it's a race now. Companies are racing to roll out these products. And the speed with which they will be taken up by consumers is it's lightning speed, because we now need these things as opposed to we wanted these things. So there are things that consumers now need. Now that's going to, I guess, create an even wider divide between the rich and the poor. And let me start with nations. Rich nations and poor nations, there's already such a humongous gap, but that gap can only get wider when we consider the speed with which this fourth industrial revolution is impacting on every business sector. So I think that some new books need to be written around surviving transitions, and I'm not an enemy of change. I don't say these things because I'm opposed to change or I think we should try to roll things back or slow things down. I think we need to catch people up. Okay, so I don't think you can fight new technology. I think that's a waste of your energy. But what we can do is we can upskill each other, and we can inform each other. And platforms like this, a podcast that discusses these things, can begin to, I guess, at least create an appetite for more understanding and information. So what do I think is the future of personal economies? How do, navigating the credit crunch was one thing, but navigating life after this global pandemic is perhaps another thing. So first of all, very important that everyone upskill themselves when it comes to using digital technology. Okay, very important that that we realize that the new jobs are for knowledge workers, and that we are upskilling ourselves, using the time to get qualified in relevant skills. Okay, because the jobs that were lost, they are not coming back. I said this in 2010, the jobs that were lost are not coming back. And the reason they were not coming back is that the credit crunch simply accelerated the inevitable. Those business models, those products, those services, it was all obsolete. They'd been replaced by other things that were more convenient and cost effective. So the factories were going to close. Why would an entrepreneur keep a factory open in the UK when they can manufacture twice as much at half the price in another country? So the crunch just accelerated the inevitable. This pandemic has accelerated the inevitable, and therefore people should start upskilling themselves. Business owners and entrepreneurs should think global. Okay, think global, think outside of your bubble, your space, and realize that the tools exist for you to generate leads and close sales in different parts of your nation and around the world. Okay, so think global, and employ some tools. You should have an app. Okay, you should have an app for your business. Even if there's no point of sale in the app, at least it can generate leads for you. You should have a good social media profile. You should have a dynamic website that is current. All of these things are now must-haves for every business, even if you're a corner shop. You need your website, you need your app, you need all of that, because that's going to be the future. People are going to not come to the shop. They're going to notify you by the app of what they want. They're going to find out, do you have this in stock? Can I pick it up at 2:00? It's the age of convenience. So you have to get ahead of that curve and realize that it's not as expensive today to get into this as it was. All right. So a lot of the barriers to entry are being removed. And, in a very cost-effective way, small business can begin to ride the digital wave, but it's about forward thinking. And then the final piece is going to sound like a contradiction to everything that I've just said, but it's a final piece and it's an important piece. And it is that small is the new big. Small is the new big. And that in this deluge of technology and screens and phones, people are feeling, people are mourning the loss of physical contact and connection and fellowship and being with a real human being. And so it's very important that that component is a part of your business vision, because that's where the vacancy is going to be. It's the vacancy for connection. And I think of it this way. I think that as an entrepreneur, most of your goals are telescopic, right? They're telescopic in that they're big picture goals out in the future. But your telescopic goals require microscopic focus, so that you have to step away from the telescope and look at your business through a microscope, because big things are made up of little things that are done well. So it's about realizing that there are little touches that you can add to your offer, to your style, to your relationship with your customers, your friends, little touches you can add that make a big difference. So we have to become microscopic and not simply telescopic in our outlook. So I said that it may contradict everything I've said, only because in the first part of me speaking, I am looking telescopically. I'm being a futurist, I guess, and I'm looking at the implications of this global pandemic and how it's accelerated and pushed us into a new economic era. We're literally at the dawn of a new economic era, a new economic reality, where even currency is up for grabs. I mean, who knows whether we're going to be actually using currency in the next 10 years. Governments, what started off as an underground rebellion against currency, the blockchain and the Bitcoin, every government is looking to create its own blockchain, Bitcoin, digital purse wallet currency, backed by their national bank. I mean, so who even knows, how that's going to be in the future? That's telescopic. But we've got to get microscopic in the way that we are handling people and relationships. Can't all be about Zoom. It can't all be about an app. There's got to be that human touch. So I pause. Your thoughts?
That's a great way you've put that there. I liked what you mentioned about that transition from manpower to mind power in particular. So if we, because this pace of change, it's going to be quite challenging for a number of people who are used to doing things a set way, have always done things a set way. What one thing would you suggest that they do to begin to prepare themselves for this shift from manpower to mind power? Because as you rightly said, there may be a period in time where you won't need as many train drivers or cab drivers because it'll all be automated. So how can a person begin to make that transition? And not even so much a person, but families. I mean, you mentioned that very important point about being microscopic, looking at your sphere of influence. So a lot of the themes around this shows are that theme around family. So family could be your biological family. It could be your family of affinity. So from that perspective, what one thing could you recommend that a family does to begin to prepare itself for that transition?
That's a really interesting question. Is there one thing? I'm gonna.
I know there's probably many things, but
yeah. And I think everyone's situation is nuanced by their circumstance, and so I'm not sure that a one size fits all, right? And I also want to preface what I'm about to say by saying that the transition has happened. Okay, this is how I think of it. I don't think about a transition that's happening or going to happen. It has happened, and what the rest of us are doing is catching up to something that actually happened, and is the inevitable consequence of this the pandemic and the subsequent lockdowns, etc. So we are already in this age. And so that whoever is not already operating differently and thinking differently and planning and upskilling themselves differently is already behind. You're already behind. And the pace at which the change is rolling itself out is so fast that for every day that you are not learning, you are falling behind. So the number one thing, and I think you've known me for some years, the number one thing is personal development as a lifestyle, as an addiction, as an obsession, as a daily habit and practice. We eat to supply our body with nutrients, without which our bodies will break down. Well, your mind needs nutrients, okay? And without mind nutrition, you are going to become dysfunctional in every conceivable way. So we don't have to wait for that. We actively put good thoughts into our minds, actively put new information into our minds. And this can be as simple as a daily routine of listening to a piece of inspiration before you start the day. It could roll out in some of your viewing on YouTube or TED Talks or the TV channels, because it's about learning and it's about budgeting and investing in your personal development, whether that's books, whether that's audios, whether that's attending seminars, whether that's employing a coach or a mentor. Because for every penny that you pour into your mind, it is going to deliver a return on that investment. Okay, it is my number one investment advice. People say, you have any investment? Yes, invest in your mind, invest in learning, invest in becoming a bigger, better version of yourself, upgrade your skills, and get great where you're good. You may be good at something, but there's always room to improve. That's the one room you have to keep in your house, is that room to improve. And families can engage in this by just having conversations about our methods, how we do things. Like, can we improve on this? Can we get a better outcome? Can we be more cost effective? You just create a conversation that is good for this modern world, because you're either going to innovate or you're going to perish in this new reality. You're either going to find new ways to get your results and be willing to experiment with new ways, or you perish because the old ways after a while simply will not work. And so that's my number one. It's personal development. Become a lifelong learner. Do away with this notion that we learn for the first part of our lives, then we go on to earn. No, we learn for life. Our brain is capable of taking in new information for life. Read a newspaper, read books, listen to wholesome radio, get your mind stimulated and get ahead of this curve, because more and more opportunities. I believe that the global transition to a new economic era will come with millions of opportunities. There are only so many jobs in a job center.
So we've touched on quite a few areas to do with business, entrepreneurship, disruptive technologies, and the like, which was quite informative. You really covered quite a lot of important issues that are relevant to all of us, whether people want to acknowledge them or not, really.
Right.
And with the theme of generational wealth, again, a lot of times people tend to consider that and focus purely on the financial element of that, without recognizing that there are additional components. When we talk of generational wealth, these components will include, your human capital, intellectual capital, social and spiritual capital. So from your perspective as a minister, what is the importance of spiritual capital to these other components?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's sort of something that we're working with at the moment in a particular series, because the word spiritual itself really speaks to your core as a person, who you are without your money, without your stuff, without your achievements and qualifications. Who are you at a very core level? And I guess when some people hear the word spiritual, they think of religion. But what I'm about to say has nothing to do with religion. I think we're all fundamentally spiritual beings. And that once we actually connect with our own spiritual essence, we'll find that it is there that we have values. Okay, it's there that we have core values, core convictions, and standards that are a part of our spiritual identity. That it's who we are, and so if you pass on your money to a future generation without passing on those core values, those core convictions and standards, then what happens is the whole lot gets squandered in the space of one generation. And we've seen this tragic phenomenon of people inheriting wealth, inheriting platforms, inheriting opportunities, only to snort it, to drink it away, to party it away, to gamble it away, to make a lot of poor choices and bad decisions and lose it within a generation. Money is something you can lose very fast if you're not smart, if you're not wise. So I'm going to summarize it with this little phrase, this little saying, is that, tough times make tough people, but tough people are going to make times easier, and easy times tends to make weaker people, and weaker people then make tough times.
Interesting.
And we go through this cycle. And so it's very important that we think of our generational legacy in terms of the estate, yes, but the skills, but at the core, the values. And that's what keeps an estate within a bloodline over a period of time. It's the succession of values, not simply the succession of assets. It's values and core convictions. And so I think it's a critical component for anyone thinking generationally, anyone who is thinking about still being a relevant name in the next 100 or 200 years, anyone that's thinking about their children's children, that can all be lost. It can all be lost in a moment if there is no intentional and strategic succession of values and core convictions, which I'm going to call your spiritual estate.
Bishop Wayne Malcolm, thank you very much for your insights and your wisdom. There's a lot there that can be unpacked. I'm sure people will spend a lot of time unpacking a lot of what you shared with us today. So,
been a pleasure.
Very grateful for your time today. Thank you very much. And finally, can you share with the listeners where they can follow you on social media?
Yeah, so we're on most of the platforms. I tend to spend most of my time on Instagram, where I tend to post my articles, and so you can find me on Instagram, Bishop WM, or the Business Bishop. It's going to come up. We're just we're doing some work on the businessbishop.com website, and hopefully that will be up and running in the not too distant future. But that's gives more of an overview of, I guess, what we do, how we do. And then our church ministry is icancommunitychurch.com. And again, we're across social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can hook me up on LinkedIn. You can find me. If you seek, you shall find.
Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you, Afam. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Learning for Legacy. To join our community or find out about what else we get up to, you can follow us on Twitter at Legacy Learning or on our website at www.legacylearning.co.uk. To access additional content or exclusives from this particular episode, please find the information within the show notes.